Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for getting up early for this program. We talked about it a little bit before. Was the idea that, having the training sessions in the middle of the day kind of breaks up your day, but having them earlier or later, and we've done them later. This is the first one we've done earlier. At least gives you the full day to get out, look at some ospreys, get out and enjoy the weather, and have some fun. So thanks for joining me, and welcome to Kate Simica here, who is our Osprey coordinator, who many of you have already had the opportunity to be in contact with. And welcome to our Osprey Nation program. The way this will run is I will go through what our program goals are, why we're interested in ospreys, a little bit about osprey history, why they declined, and then I'll go through some of their natural history, and then I'll give some information about how to monitor your nests and what to report and when to report it. And so that's basically where we're going to go. So first of all, I'd like to say thank you very much, because we couldn't do this program without you. I started this program in 2014 at the request of DEP. They had a wildlife biologist who retired who was monitoring ospreys from about 1970. And when she retired, they asked me to take over the monitoring program. And then in a weak moment, I did. So now I'm having trouble moving. Oh, wait a minute. I need, hold on just a second. Trying to move my slides forward here. Okay, so I mentioned that I'm trying to get everyone familiar with the program. I'll give you a few tools that you can use that'll help you monitor your osprey nests. But the biggest issue we're trying to solve here is what is going on with the osprey population. We're trying to monitor the population as it grows, and it will not continue to grow forever. And we need to know why and when it begins to decline or level off. So in order to do that, what I need to know from you folks is what is the active number of nests and how many are producing fledglings. The number of fledglings and the number of active nests will give us the information we need to know to document the osprey population. So breeding success obviously is how many nests are out there and how many nests of those are producing birds that fledge. That's the key. So why are we interested in ospreys? Well, I've always been interested in ospreys since my dad introduced me to them when I was about 6 years old, fishing at the mouth of the Housatonic River. One flew by and he told me, this was back in 1956, he told me that these birds are going to be extinct in my lifetime. Well, at that time, the osprey population was declining rapidly. There were only a few nests left, and they were on their way out. So I got really interested. I got back to my room, looked up in my little golden guide to birds about ospreys, and so I've been interested in ospreys ever since. But the reason they're so interesting and important is because they exclusively feed on live fish. Unlike gulls and terns and some other seabirds, ospreys need to catch their own live fish. Therefore, they're totally dependent on the fish population. So the more diverse and the more abundant the fish population is, the more abundant abundant the ospreys are going to be. So they're totally, they give us a really good view of water quality. So we can judge water quality, basically, one of the ways we can judge water quality is by the osprey population. So given the fact that ospreys have been increasing over the last 20 years, we can pretty much determined that the water quality has been improving in Long Island Sound and also in other areas where the ospreys are nesting. So these guys really are ecosystem sentinels, and they're giving us valuable information on water quality and their habitat. So even early on, most early biologists were interested in ospreys, including guys like John James Audubon, because they're so unique. And they're relatively easy birds for citizen scientists to study, because unlike other raptors, which nest pretty much hidden away in the woods, or they hide their nests very well, ospreys are nesting usually out in the open, on a platform, on a dead tree, on a statue, on a navigation buoy, on a cell tower. So they're really easy to see. And because of that, we can study them much easier than we can study something like red-tailed hawks or peregrine falcons. So the ospreys and other birds of prey began their decline in the 50s and 60s because of the wide use of DDT and DDE, which was supposed to be the miracle insecticide of the time, and was not supposed to be harmful to people or animals or birds, etc. Here's a picture of DDT being sprayed on beachgoers at Hammonasset State Park in the 40s. So, but we quickly realized that something was wrong. And it was really Rachel Carson who really studied the effects of DDT on birds of prey. She was the one who convinced scientists that those particular organochlorine pesticides were having a bad effect on birds of prey. And what was going on, of course, was that the DDT and DDE was interfering with the bird's ability to produce calcium. And without the ability to produce calcium, not only did it make their bones weakened, but it prevented them from laying viable eggs, because the eggshells are almost total calcium. And so what was happening was birds were laying eggs that the shells were so thin they would crack and break upon being laid, or when the adult sat on them, they'd break, or sometimes birds were laying eggs without any shell at all. And so what happened was we noticed that there were a lot of adults around, but there were no juveniles replacing the natural mortality of the adults. And as the adults began to die off, the population really began to crash. So thanks to Rachel Carson and her published book in '62, and the realization that DDT was actually the culprit for the decline of a lot of these birds, we banned DDT in 1972, but they continued to decline. They didn't start to recover until really the early 80s. They were endangered in Connecticut in '76, but DEP began monitoring the decline in 1970, actually to about 2014. So I know most of you who are already monitors know pretty much all about ospreys, but for those of you who don't, and you're new at our osprey monitoring program here, if you've seen ospreys, you'll know that these are fairly large birds of prey. They can be confused with gulls because they have a lot of white on them. Some people confuse them with bald eagles, but there's some distinctive characteristics about ospreys that once you see them and see their flight, you can't misidentify them. They average about 3 to 4 pounds, a 6-foot wingspan, and they have a kind of a crooked way of the wings kind of fold back a little bit when they're flying, almost like a W. Instead of being straight out like a bald eagle, like this, the wings kind of turn back a little bit and form a W when they're soaring. They're mostly dark on top, white underneath. Bald eagles, of course, are dark underneath. And of course, like all birds of prey, they have a sharply decurved bill. And the adults have a yellow iris, and the juveniles have an orange iris. But good luck seeing that at 300 yards away when you're looking through a scope. So that's not really a really good characteristic unless you have a really good view. They're flooding back now onto their nest sites. Everybody should be seeing ospreys coming back to the nests. I don't think we have any birds that have laid eggs yet, but they will shortly begin to lay eggs. Right now, they're rebuilding their nests. They're copulating. We saw that the other day at Milford Point. But once they get going, they usually lay 2 to 4 eggs, sometimes as many as 5, sometimes only 1. Generally, the younger birds lay fewer eggs the first time they begin to actively nest. And during the 5-week incubation period, the male will be feeding the female. Oh, when they're laying eggs, they usually lay the eggs about 2 days apart, and the female will sit on the eggs as they're being laid. So when they hatch sequentially. The first one that she was sitting on will hatch first. The last one that she's sitting on will hatch last. So you'll see a difference in size in the chicks. But during incubation period, which you will notice because you'll see the female will be squatting down on the nest and not moving at all. The male will be coming back, bringing fish back to the perch, tearing them up and feeding the female. So then you'll know that, hey, it looks like the female is incubating, because you won't be able, usually you can't see down into the nest to see how many eggs are there and when the eggs are being incubated. All you'll notice is the female squatting down on the nest. So the male will be coming back. He'll be feeding the female as she's incubating, and occasionally they'll switch. The male will incubate for a while too, but mostly it's the female. So after 5 or 6 weeks, depending on the age of the bird, when they started to nest, the young will hatch. You won't know when the young hatch, but I'll tell you as a little bit later how you can judge the age of the young birds. And as the young get mature and they leave the nest, they don't really come back, only maybe once in a while. So it's not like they're dependent upon the nest after they fledge. And then at the end of the season, after the young fledge, they begin their migration south, usually in October or so. And the female and young usually leave first. Our birds tend to go to Brazil, and the male will leave later. And that is timed with the fish migration. And once the fish, mainly the menhaden, the bunkers that they're feeding on, and other fish as well, but mainly the menhaden, once those fish begin to migrate south, the ospreys go as well. So they go to Brazil. They don't spend the winter together. They may spread out all over the different tributaries of the big rivers. And then now in the spring, generally the male comes back first, followed by the female a couple of weeks later or a few days later. And but I wanted to show you the eggs are pretty interesting. They're cream colored with with brown splotches on them. They're actually fairly good sized eggs. I'm going to show you the eggs because you're probably not going to see eggs when you're doing your monitoring, but they're fairly good size. So a lot of the development takes place in the egg. They're altricial birds, which means most of the development occurs outside the egg. Not quite as precocial as like chickens or ducks, which leave the nest right after the eggs have hatched. So, but these birds, the young are little downy little critters, and you won't really see the young until they're about 10 days old. So after the incubation period, the eggs begin to hatch one at a time, usually 2 days apart. And you won't see these young until they're about 10 days old. Once they hit 10 days old, then you'll see their little fuzzy heads poking above the nest. So that'll give you an idea that your birds at this age are about 10 days old. You know, it's plus or minus. So you see the chick on the right is a little bit smaller than the chick on the left, which means this one hatched first, the one on the left hatched a couple of days later. But they grow very quickly. And after another 10 days, they're really a good size. And you'll see different from the adults is the fact that they have kind of a rusty breast. They have almost a reddish colored, cinnamon colored breast and back. And these birds here are about 20 days old. At 40 days old, they're about ready to fledge. If I can get it over there. So at 40 days old, here they are. They look almost like the adults, don't they? Except if you notice the back of the wings, the shoulders are spotted and they have a little rust underneath their wings. These birds are just about ready to fledge. So just before they fledge, about a week or a few days before they fledge, you'll see them spreading their wings, catching the wind. They might lift up off the nest and come back down on the nest, lift up off the nest and come back down. They're practicing flight while they're still at the nest. We consider those birds fledged. So during your monitoring period, if you see these birds are lifting off the nest and coming back down, they're about 40 days old. And the next time you come and visit your nest, they're not on the nest, I consider those fledged. You don't actually have to see them leave, although it's nice if you do, but you don't actually have to see them leave the nest and fly off to document that they're fledged. If they're doing this, showing this behavior up and down off the nest, testing their wings, and then you come back and they're gone, we consider them fledged. So a little bit more on identification. As I mentioned, the white breast. The females generally have a little necklace, this being a female here. The males have a clear white breast. So that's a good indicator. It's not, doesn't hold 100% true, but most of the time when your birds are standing on the nest, one of them you'll see will have a dark necklace, and that'll be the female. So you can tell the male from the female. A little bit on where we've been with this program. You can see we started in 2014. We've got data here up to 2020. And now we're hoping we'll add to this year. We had a little snag last year because of COVID. Our Osprey coordinator had to pull out. We lost a lot of data. Some of the data never got in, so we had to do some estimation. But thanks to Brenda Murtha and other people, we managed to scrape what we could together. So, but here we are this year. You can see overall the populations have been increasing. And up until about 2020, 2019, we had a slight decrease. And we're not exactly sure why. This was a region-wide decline a little bit. For some reason or other, birds were abandoning their nests, and not only in Connecticut, but all the way from Maryland north. So we don't know why exactly this happened. Hopefully it was just a fluke, and it will continue to build again this year. But as I mentioned, at some point, we're going to reach, the saturation point for ospreys in Connecticut, but I don't think we've reached it yet. And when we do reach it, I'd like to know why, where, and how. So that's the purpose of this program. And as I said before, I'm so glad that you guys are helping us out, because without all the monitors putting in all the time and effort looking at these nests, we'd never have a good idea about what's going on. Overall, we could say, yeah, there seems to be a lot more ospreys around now than there was 5 years ago, but we're trying to get a little bit more specific than that. So we're trying to figure out the breeding success. As I mentioned, that that is determined by the number of active nests and how many birds are fledging from those nests. It's nice if you can go out at least once a week from now until August to take a look at the nests and record on our data sheet what you're seeing. You don't have to send in a the record every time you go out, but you can compile it and send in the data once a week, once every week, or once every 2 weeks, just every 2 weeks. If we get reports every day on the same nest, it gets a little overwhelming. But if you're out there looking at the nests and you keep notes on what's going on, you can file a report every week or two, and that's fine. And maybe Kate, you want to add to that?
Yeah, that sounds perfect. I'll be able to definitely get them in faster if people are submitting them less often, rather than if people submit a report like 3 days a week or something, then I'm getting a lot more reports.
It just makes things go smoother, and we don't want Kate to be up until 3 a.m. every night logging reports. Or do we? No. So when you're visiting your nest, it's good to stay at least 15 minutes, better if you stay a half an hour. The best time to look at these nests is in the morning, because that's when the birds are most active. The adults need to, especially the male, needs to get out and find food, because the young birds, like kids, are really hungry first thing in the morning. And so that's when you're going to see most of the activity. There'll be activity all day long. You don't have to go in the morning. That's when the most activity will be. Later on the day is fine as well. So if you can get out for about a half an hour on your visits, that'd be great. I think you all know where the Osprey report form can be found. It's on our website as well. So when you're reporting. Okay. It's good to have at least a pair of binoculars when you're looking at these nests. Even better if you have a spotting scope. Bring along a little notebook you can take some notes on. As I said, then you can send in the reports every week or two. Clipboard, a pencil. If you need directions to the or a map to where your nests are. If you find new nests, let us know. We'll try to put a pin on it somewhere. If you have an iPhone, if you find a nest, there's a lat along location at the bottom of your phone, so you can give us the exact location of the nest. If not, we'll try to figure out where it is. So we provide a lot of materials, hopefully everything you'll need to know. This particular training session is also really what's on our monitor training guide, which is downloadable on our website as well. The training guide goes through everything, maybe even a little bit more. Our guidelines. Let me explain a little bit about the guidelines for monitoring. Ospreys are individuals. Some will let you get closer to nests than others. If you're too close to the nest, obviously the birds will fly from the nest. They'll be chirping, circling around, and you're way too close. DEP suggests that you don't get any closer than 300 feet, which is a good sort of standard distance to be from your nest when you're monitoring, because what you want is the birds to be going about their normal day-to-day activities without interfering with people. So if you're flushing them off the nest, they're not going to be going through their normal breeding behavior. So about 300 feet. Some will let you get a little closer. We have a pair of ospreys nesting at Milford Point that we're trying to get the camera up on now. That don't seem to mind us at all when we're up there working on the camera. They'll leave the nest, fly around, they come right back again. So generally, get as close as you can without disturbing the birds, and try to get there, as I said, at least once a week or more. We have identified how many nests now, Kate?
So far we have 883 total nests, and I've been removing the ones that don't exist anymore as people have been telling me about them, but I think I have added close to, or maybe a couple more than 20 new nests this year already. 632 nests are already monitored. So we still have 200 and something, 250 nests that need monitors.
Okay.
Probably like a little less because probably some of those nests don't exist anymore. But yeah, we have a lot of nests, 880 something. So
yeah, so we've been, and the state and private citizens have been putting up Osprey platforms basically since the 1970s. And as these platforms are used or unused, they fall down or disappear. And so a lot of the platforms or nest sites that we had identified in the past are no longer there. And so Kate's been actively trying to remove the nests that no longer exist. But every year there are new nests that show up because young birds are looking for new places to build nests. So there are new nests all the time. And so with over 200 or more new nests or nests that are unmonitored, we really need help. So if you know anybody that would like to join this program, or if you would like to monitor another nest, let us know. We'll try to find another nest for you, because 200 unmonitored nests is a fairly significant number. We like to get them covered. Our map is now, we've got all red pins, which are all the nests that we know that exist. And if you click on a red pin, you'll see if someone is monitoring it or not monitoring it, what's going on. You want to add anything to this, Kate?
Yeah, so we have all of these pins. There will be a section that says monitored, Y/N. And if there's a Y, then there's a monitor. If there's an N, then we don't have a monitor. I've updated all of the pins to have the 2020 and the 2021 stewards names on them so far. And I've been entering all the 2021 data as it gets submitted, not right away. Like it can take up to a week for me to get it in there, but I've been getting it in a little faster than that. And eventually, as it slows down a little bit, I'm going to go back and I'm going to add the 2020 data into the map as well, but I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, so it's a totally expandable map. I mean, in some cases, you can expand right down and almost see, and maybe can see the platform itself. Did you notice that, Kate?
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
As you expand the map, you can zoom down in and almost see the nest itself.
I found with a lot of the nest sites, whatever they're on, people say that they can almost see the landmarks that they're on, or the platform, or the structure, or the light post on the map, because it's on the satellite mode.
Yeah, so the zoom feature is really good. So this is what the map looks like before we zoom it out. I can't zoom it out on my screen here, but
it's also really helpful when you zoom in. You can see the street names around your nest, and you can see like a restaurant near your nest or different landmarks, which is helpful in knowing where it is. I am going to add more location information to some of them too. I've added it in for a bunch of them already, but not all of them.
Okay. So a little concerning is the fact that we've got over 200 nests that are unmonitored. So we should be able to find enough people to monitor most of those nests. I mean, this is not an exact science, obviously, anyway. I don't think it's possible for us to be able to identify every single nest that exists in the state and have a monitor on it. But at least we can get a fairly good idea about what's going on with the population by our existing resources that we have now and monitors. And so that's important. And I know DEP uses our information. Office of Long Island Sound is always requesting our information. So it's very valuable. And it's probably one of the largest citizen science programs going on in the state right now. So once again, I can't thank you guys enough for helping us. We'll provide most of the resources, hopefully all the resources you need. They're available on our website. If you know somebody who is if you haven't signed up yet, or you know someone who is interested in signing up, the sign up form is there. The guide is there, which is similar to this program, the report form. There's also report a new nest form, a little 6-minute guide about how you can help ospreys. And our 2020 report is there. This is our online report guide, report form. So this is what you need to report every time. Well, not every time you go out, but I mean, at least once every 2 weeks, if you could fill this out so we know what's going on at the nests. If you happen to go by a nest that you're not monitoring and take a look at it, we're interested in that as well. Just check off the box saying that you're not the assigned steward, but you were passing by the nest and wanted to report on what you saw. So, because we're interested in everything that's going on all these nests. So this is fairly self-explanatory, fairly easy to fill out. And I hope you guys will do it. One of the problems we had last year was we had monitors that stopped halfway through the season, and we didn't know if the active nest had actually produced fledged young or not. So we need the big thing is how many birds are fledging from the nest. So we hope you'll stick with it until the end of the season, and we can have a final report on your nest. The ospreys have a lot of threats going on. The biggest threat is nest entanglement, because these birds bring back all kinds of stuff to their nests, from boots to, plastic bags, rope, monofilament. They fill their nests with all kinds of junk, especially they like the color blue for some reason or other. We get a lot of, not a lot, but we do have a few every year of nest entanglements, which is the adult or the young bird gets tangled up in a monofilament in the nest, and then when it tries to leave the nest, it ends up hanging upside down underneath the nest. Most of the time they don't make it, but occasionally we can rescue them. Christine's Critters and a place called Hope are active rehabilitators that will get out and try to rescue any birds that seem to be entangled. Here's the website for these guys if you need to contact them. You should also contact DEP. We'll provide you with that information as well in case there's some threat to ospreys. Like we had occasionally people are destroying nests after the eggs are laid, which is illegal. It's okay to remove a nest before the eggs are laid. DEP considers an active nest only after the eggs are laid. But sometimes they're nesting in locations that are that people don't like them nesting in, and they start to remove the nest. This is okay until the birds begin to lay eggs. Once they start laying eggs, it's illegal. So that's a DEP call, and we'll give you the DEP number to call law enforcement. Occasionally we get, kids on jet skis doing donuts around nests, keeping the birds off the nest for long periods. That would be a case where you probably call DEP as well. And just a few other things before I ended, which is we're getting a few calls on how do, the birds are nesting in a location that we don't like. We would like to set up a platform for them. How do I do that? And that would require, if it's in a tidal area, you'll need a permit from Office of Long Island Sound to set up a platform there. The permits are free. And there's all kinds of information on how to build your platform, how to get it up. Sometimes we've had Boy Scouts put them up. We can give you a website on where actually there's someone you can call that will give you some information on that as well. But generally, if you want to construct a platform, it's in a tidal zone, you do need a permit. But as I mentioned, the permits are free. What about platforms that are falling down? We get occasionally calls about my platform is tipping over or the wind blew it over. Since I have no idea who built half of these platforms or most of the platforms, since they were started to be put up in the 1970s, if you know the landowner or can figure out who put up the platform in the first place and contact them, either for permission to repair the platform or to get them to repair the platform. That's the only way to do it. We certainly don't have the resources to go out and try to repair all the platforms that are coming down. So there has been a few questions about platforms that are falling over and how to repair them, what to do, how to do it. And usually it's up to either the landowner or the monitor, if they have the resources and help and get out and fix up the platform. But that was about all I had. And I know there's going to be questions. And so if you want to see this Osprey in the moonlight while we're trying to answer your questions, happy to do so. Did I miss anything, Kate?
No, I think you hit everything. Do we want to jump into questions?
Sure.
When you say the best time to check nests is in the morning, do you mean 7 a.m. or 11 a.m. or does it not matter?
Usually between sunrise and 10 or 11 a.m.
Okay. The map no longer has a color code for unmonitored nests, correct? Yes, that is correct. When you click on it, click on the individual pin, it will tell you if it's monitored or not. And if you want me to list off all the unmonitored nests in like a specific town or a couple of specific towns, you can email me and I'll list them all off to you so you can know what they all are without clicking all the pins. Once a nest is abandoned, is it ever used again? What are the reasons to abandon?
Okay, so that's a great question. Reasons for abandonment are usually weather related or predator related. And predators for ospreys include raccoons that swim out into the marsh, climb up into the nest and eat the eggs. They can be bald eagles will come in and take young ospreys off the nest. Probably the greatest predator we have on ospreys nesting are great horned owls will come in at night. And oftentimes the adults will come back and try to rebuild, but sometimes they'll abandon. However, an abandoned nest, usually the next year, will be occupied either by that same pair or a different pair. So if the nest is abandoned, if your nest seems to be abandoned, stick with it for a couple of weeks because the birds may return or another pair may return.
Thank you. Thank you for the list of scopes and binoculars. Do we know of some reasonably priced small cameras with a great zoom lens? Someone suggested a bridge camera with a super zoom. I have a Panasonic DMC FZ70. Sony also has a bridge camera. Bridge cameras have the built-in zoom and the lens cannot be exchanged.
Okay, cameras, unfortunately, are a little above my pay grade. I don't really know too much about cameras since I really don't have one myself, but we can provide you the resources. Patrick Cummins, the executive director, is a great camera guy. He can help you out. Also, I might mention that Connecticut Audubon, our office, sells binoculars and tripods as well. But the question I had on the last training session was they were looking for more inexpensive ones. I mean, we can suggest inexpensive ones, but we don't recommend them. So I came up with a list of what I thought were reasonable equipment that is around $100.
I sent it out to everybody who was currently signed up to be a monitor. I sent that out to like that email list. If you didn't get it, I'll add you to that list and I'll send you the email though.
Okay.
But I sent it out to the list that you sent me to everyone.
Great.
I would be happy to ask a couple of our monitors who I know really like taking the pictures, what kind of camera they use, and then I can share that in my next email as well, if that would be helpful.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay. My nest is on a cell tower. I assume privately owned. Can DEEP help with removing plastic in that case?
They won't. The issue is that almost all osprey nests have plastic and rope in them. And the people who monitor and own their own platforms and will often go out in the winter and off season, get up on a ladder and pull out monofilament and rope and other entanglement things that might be in the nest. But there's no way that DEP is going to be trying to get up onto cell towers and take plastic off the nest. So the only thing you can do is keep your fingers crossed.
I know a lot of the like rehabber places, like the two we had listed on the slides earlier, will sometimes remove the fishing line or plastic from the nest. I'm not sure what their criteria is for if they'll remove it or not. But in my next email, some of our stewards made last year a list of all of the rehabbers in Connecticut who will work with the Osprey. So I can include that document in the email as well. And if people were interested in reaching out to them, maybe they would be interested in helping you remove plastic, especially if it was bad or something.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. Like I said, almost all osprey nests have some kind of junk in them. Plastic bags aren't really a huge problem, but it's the rope and monofilament that is really an issue. And as I said, we can't get up into every nest and look what's in there. So it's basically, keep your fingers crossed. It happens, they get entangled a couple every year, but I mean, so far it hasn't been a huge problem, but it's very distressing when it happens to you, very distressing.
I have not observed osprey in my nest yet this year, but have a couple of crows up in it on the cell tower. Should I assume the nest is abandoned at this point?
No, not yet. It's still early in the season. I would give it another 3 weeks before you consider it abandoned. And also, maybe we can provide you with some information on another nest that you could monitor.
I could definitely do that. If people email me and tell me the area they're interested in, I'll give them suggestions.
Yeah, great.
Someone else said something similar that I think your answer would have answered. Someone's nest in North Branford is still empty. How long do I wait to see if they will return? A couple of weeks.
Yeah, at least a couple of weeks anyway, yeah.
How does territoriality work for Osprey? Do they claim and defend territory at a certain radius around the nest, or do they share fishing grounds?
That's a great question. And this question came up in the last training program. If you notice, generally, ospreys nest fairly far apart from each other. However, in some places, like at the mouth of the Connecticut River on Great Island, we have over 70 nests within a mile of each other. And so the territories are determined by the fish population. If there is a lot of fish, reliable source of fish, ospreys will nest closer together. They don't have to fight with each other over fishing grounds. If the fish are not so abundant, ospreys will be nesting further apart, so they're not competing with each other. But at the mouth of the Connecticut River, there is a huge fishery of menhaden, which is a herring species that they use for, it's a commercial species as well, although they've got pretty good restrictions on the commercial take of menhaden. But anyway, at the mouth of the Connecticut River, there is a huge number of menhaden. And so that can support a lot of osprey nests close together so they're not competing with each other. Down further along the coast, like in Milford, for instance, when we were working on our osprey camera last week, the male had been back, and we were up adjusting the furniture for the camera, and I noticed there was a fish in the nest that the male had brought back. And when I looked at it, I realized it was a brook trout. So here's an osprey waiting for the fish to come back in Long Island Sound, had figured out where DEP was stocking trout in local streams, and was pulling trout out of streams and feeding on them. So they're very adaptable. I mean, they're not adverse to taking Japanese koi out of private ponds, but the whole breeding season is developed around the fish population. So as I mentioned, the male comes back first. There's not a lot of fish available for the male this time of the year. They'll pick off an occasional eel, maybe a flounder they can find, but the menhaden, the herring, haven't really come back in full force. Although in the next week or so, the river herring will start running. But he doesn't really need a lot of food right now, right? The female comes back, and she doesn't need a whole lot of food. She'll lay eggs and sit on the eggs. And so they can pick away at whatever fish resources are here early, usually not too much. But then as the fish population and diversity increases in May and June, when all the fish are coming back into Long Island Sound, all the herring and all the other fish resources are coming back, that's when the young are growing the fastest. And that's when the birds need most of the food. So they've got it timed pretty well. They don't need so much food early in the season, but as the young are growing really fast, that's when the big plug of fish are available to them. So right now, as I said, the ospreys are picking off a trout from a stock stream somewhere, or a Japanese koi, or sometimes early flounders. And then probably this coming week, the river herring will start to run. They'll be picking off those. Anyway, that was a longer than you needed explanation, but I thought it was interesting.
Thank you. That was a good explanation. When is the latest date that the osprey will build an active nest in this area?
I would say, based on my experience, it would be the end of May.
Okay. So we still have some time.
Yeah, there's plenty of time. There's plenty of time.
On Griswold Point, there is an osprey nest that is built on top of 2 logs on land, just about 60 inches plus or minus above the sand. What is up with that?
We have a couple. I think there's 3 areas that I know where ospreys are now building on the ground. One is on one of the Norwalk Islands. Another one is at the Charles E. Wheeler Wildlife Refuge behind Milford Point, where there's a log, on the floating log on the marsh. It's covered with weeds. They nest on that. And the other one is at Griswold Point. The Griswold Point and the Norwalk Island nest fails every year because raccoons get to them. The one at Milford Point actually is successful because it's far enough out in the marsh, and the big log they're nesting on is floating, that it's away from raccoons. But Griswold Point almost always, in fact, has always failed as the one on the Norwalk Islands because of raccoons.
Thank you. Someone says that drones by curious onlookers are an issue, and then mentions that an inexpensive camera with a nice zoom is a Nikon P900.
Oh, great.
And that maybe a more expensive one is a Canon 7D MII with a 600 lens. The Nikon is much lighter to carry and has a 2000 zoom.
Oh, great. Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, and I think you mentioned drones, and I get a question every year about, how close to a nest can I get with my drone? And my answer is 2.5 miles. don't go anywhere near an osprey nest or any other birds of prey or any nest with a drone. The ospreys and other birds recognize drones as predators and they attack them. And both the drone and the bird get usually injured. So please don't go anywhere near osprey nests with a drone.
Okay. Do ospreys mate for life?
Good question. Do ospreys mate for life? Yes, ospreys mate for life, but they don't mourn for a minute. So when one of the adults dies or disappears, the other one will take a mate very quickly. So yes, like eagles and a lot of other birds, Canada geese, swans, etc., they do mate for life.
Do they find each other, like the same pairs, do they find each other based on their original nest site, or how do they
Yes. Yeah, because they don't winter together. You know, as I mentioned, the adults winter far apart, hundreds or more miles apart, but they both home in on the nest that they've been using. The males come back first, females come back later, and so that's what I said before is the secret to a successful marriage if you spend your winter vacation apart. Don't quote me on that.
Will osprey nest near and fish from freshwater rivers?
Oh yes. If you look at our map, you'll see that osprey nests are all the way up most of our major rivers now, as far up as like almost as far as Enfield and some of the lakes, the interior lakes. As long as there's enough fish supply, the ospreys will nest. Again, they're concentrated along the coast because that's where most of our migratory fish are and where they're most available. But they'll nest anywhere where there's enough resources for them to successfully raise young.
Someone noted another camera. I'm writing all these down, so I'll send them out. But a Nikon P1000, which she thinks has a fixed lens, and another one with an interchangeable lens, which is a Nikon D7500. So I have a couple cameras that people have recommended now, so I'll send out the names of them sometime next week in an email.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that'll be helpful. It is fun to see, to get some good pictures of the birds that are on your nest. So.
Yeah, people have been posting awesome pictures on the Osprey Facebook group, and have been sending me awesome pictures. So yeah, they're very cool to look at.
Excellent. I didn't mention the Facebook page, but maybe we should.
Oh, yes. If anyone is interested, there's a Facebook page. It's called Osprey Stewards of Connecticut. And you can only join it if you're an Osprey monitor. It's run by some of our volunteers, and people post pictures of their nests, and people can ask questions in there and can post all kinds of whatever they want, all kinds of things in there. It's a good resource though. People post information about a bunch of different things that everyone might be having the same questions about.
Great. Any other questions?
What is the status of their habitat in South America? Are there threats to them from deforestation and other problems?
Yeah, there is some threats to them on deforestation, and also with mining. Some of the mining pits that are polluted, but usually they roost along some of the major river corridors. I don't think hunting is a big problem with ospreys yet in South America, but certainly deforestation can be removing a lot of the winter habitat. But so far, because as I mentioned, the population is still increasing, it hasn't been a big issue in South America that I know of.
Okay. Will osprey fight over a nest/platform? I have observed 3 ospreys flying above a nest platform while one adult is in the nest.
Yep. Yeah, they'll compete for nest sites. And it's not the young from last year. When the young ospreys leave the nest in the fall and they follow the female south, or they don't follow her, but they migrate south to South America. They stay there for 2 years until they reach their adult size, or their adult, until they become adults, and then they come back. So it's not like they're following the female back and trying to get back on the nest. The young birds actually stay on the wintering grounds for 2 years, 2 full years before they come back. But adults will compete for nest sites. And generally, if there's a pair that's been nesting for a few years on the same nest, they'll successfully compete with any intruders that might be there. But we see that all the time. I saw it at Milford Point the other day. There were at least 2 other birds were circling around the nest that the adult male and female were guarding. So yeah, they do compete for nests.
We have some more notes about cameras. So-called super zooms are not cheap if your goal is taking worthwhile pictures at over 100 yards away. 500 plus millimeter lenses are usually necessary if you desire pictures that enable you to identify eyes, spots, necklace. Just an opinion. And I take thousands of wildlife pictures a year. Another person says a Nikon P900 is around $600. Someone says if cost is not an issue, the Olympus Micro 4/3 interchangeable lens OMD EM1 series is fantastic for bird photography. The site getolympus.com is a great resource. And I think those are all the notes about the cameras that I wanted to read through all of them at once.
Okay.
But again, I'll write down more information and I'll send it out. It seems like people are interested in getting more information about the cameras.
Okay. All right.
Someone is asking, can we repeat how to sign up to monitor a specific nest? I just, right that second, posted the link to the sign up form, and I also put my email in the chat box, my email address. If you email me or fill out that form, you can sign up for a specific nest. I would check on the map to see if it's monitored or not, or if you just email me the nest, I can just sign you up for it and I'll tell you I signed you up for it. And if you're not sure what specific nest you want to sign up for, then I can give you options and you can pick them out, which ones you're interested in. I hope that answers that. I think a couple people asked something around that. Yeah. So if that doesn't answer it, let me know.
Okay.
If we see someone with a drone near a nest, is it time to call DEEP?
Yes.
Okay. I'll include that number in the next email too, because I've had a couple people ask me for it and I've given it to them, but I'll include it in the next email.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, someone else says do juveniles return to the area where they were hatched?
Yes, they'll return to except they're not juveniles. As I mentioned, they're adults now because the juveniles stay on the wintering grounds for 2 years. So they come back as adults, but they generally come back to the area where they were fledged. And that can be a wide area too. I mean, maybe say if they fledged out of the nest at Milford Point, they'll come back to the Connecticut coastline and begin looking for nests on their own, anywhere from, who knows, from Connecticut all the way up to Massachusetts until they find a suitable nest. So they don't actually home in on the same nest, but they'll come back to the general area.
Another person is asking about the form. use to identify as monitors, and I put that in the chat, and I put my email, so you can fill out the form or just email me, and either is fine.
Okay.
Joyce put the Facebook page link in the chat, or no, not the link, sorry. She put the name of the Facebook page, and Madeline Dennis, who manages the page, she put her information, her email address on there. So if people want that, that's in the chat. What area of Osprey winter in North Captiva Island in Florida?
What was that question?
What area of Osprey winter in North Captiva Island in Florida? Maybe what area of North Captiva Island, or?
I'm not sure what the question was. But certainly, you know, ospreys nest all along the East Coast, everywhere from Central America all the way up to Maine and beyond. So I know they're nesting on Captiva. I don't know how many are there or what the history of those are, but yeah.
Okay. Someone says, I have observed red-winged blackbirds mobbing an osprey trying to nest. How long will an osprey continue to stay on platform before abandoning it? Bishop's Cove in Stonington is mobbed.
Yeah. That's common. Sometimes crows, red-winged blackbirds, who perceive ospreys as threats to their own nests will mob ospreys. But generally, it's inconsequential. Ospreys, you know, will pay almost no attention to red-winged blackbirds. You know, they may duck and weave a little bit, but red-winged blackbirds are not going to dissuade ospreys from nesting. And then once the red-winged blackbirds get well underway, that'll disappear as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Someone asked, is there a paper to put in the car to identify as a steward? Yes, there is. I sent it out in my last email, but I will write down your name and I'm going to send it to you after this. If anyone else didn't get it and wants it, you can ask me. But I think I got pretty much everyone with it because I sent it out in my last big email. Oh, here we go. The osprey winter in Captiva Island instead of going south to Brazil. So I was wondering if they were from Connecticut as well, the ones that winter in Captiva Island.
No, I don't think so. I think that's a regional population. I believe most of the ospreys in the Northeast up here head to South America. I'm not sure exactly. I think the ospreys in Florida and down in the Gulf states are resident birds. So I think they pretty much hold tight there.
All right. And that was our last question.
Okay, that's great. All right, well, keep in mind that you can always email us, give us a phone call. I think Kate has got all our information on where, if you need to contact us, we're happy to help. And again, I want to thank Kate specifically for stepping up and doing a great job with this year. I want to certainly thank all the monitors. As I mentioned, this program could not exist without your help. And so from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate you guys so much. You're doing so much to help us. We couldn't do it without you. So thank you very much. Have a great weekend and get out there and enjoy some ospreys.